Welcome to the Treasury Update Podcast, Coffee Break Sessions, presented by Strategic Treasurer, the show where we cover foundational topics and core Treasury issues in about the same amount of time it takes you to drink your cup of coffee. I'll be your host, Jonathan, Media Production Specialist here at Strategic Treasurer, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We are back for another coffee break session with Paul Galloway. Welcome back to the show, Paul.
Thanks.
Do you want to jump in and just tell us what is natural language processing?
Natural language processing is a machine learning technology. It allows computers to understand human language. It can also change it. So it has this ability to identify speech patterns, the way content is written, and modify it or change the context of what the language is.
Now, you said this was a form of machine learning. How does natural language processing differ from machine learning?
In the sense of what we talked about in prior podcasts is machine learning. Machine learning focuses on pattern recognition and accuracy of data. So it uses data sets to analyze and learn from and more accurately predict in terms of what expectations are. Natural language processing focuses on language as a data set. Machine learning, as we talked about last time, is think of it more around numbers. Now, in our daily lives, when we think about natural language processing, it's used in chatbots, Alexa, Google Nest. These are examples of natural language processing. They can recognize things that you ask it. I use Google Nest all the time to determine what the temperature is outside, or ask it a question about, who wrote this song, who played this part in a movie, or it can be anything, right? It's identifying what you're saying to it. It's doing a search of language content, written content that's out in the internet, and it's coming back with an answer. And it does it quite quickly. You think about it. I mean, it's got to process rapidly. It doesn't take it too much time to come back with an answer. Now, machine learning is broader in the sense that NLP, natural language processing, is like a subset of machine learning. It's a type of machine learning. But machine learning, in a broader sense, it can be used for images, speech systems, and analytics of data. And that's what makes machine learning is just broader in a sense. So when we think about NLP, it's just that narrow set of machine learning.
Okay. How are treasurers using this in finance today?
This can be used in various ways. And so some of the ways that come to mind would be when it comes to like classifying financial documents into categories. It can interpret context and content of what's written. And from a financial standpoint, financial reporting comes in both sets, data and written. So it can help you with that. It can identify legal entities and the financial relationships of those within an organization. And it can help Treasury manage cash across legal entities, banks, and business lines. It's kind of that we got financial transactions occurring, but the NLP can help you manage that across various subsets based on language. I have a business line that's named this. I have banks that are named this. I have legal entities. I have these various products that have various names. It can identify that information and it can put data into context based on language.
In our previous episodes on anomaly detection and machine learning, in the context of fraud, you talked about it helping by seeing numbers and seeing what's out of place. Is natural language processing used in fraud? And how does it work if it's more of a language-based system than a numbers system?
So that's a good question. So when you think about machine learning, it is used to utilized to detect fraud. It's not the only case. We talked about that in prior podcasts, forecast, variance, fraud, various other things. But when you think about fraud, how can NLP help you? It interprets language, which means that you can detect anomalies in terms of your legal entities, names, dates, locations, and dollar amounts. It can detect variances with dollar amounts as well. But it typically does in the broader context. It's not the exact same as what we talked about with broader machine learning, but when you think about the context of written content, it can help you there.
What have you seen for challenges or growing pains of implementing natural language processing?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge with natural language processing is around getting enough data. It's a little different than bank transactions per se. Bank transactions, you can get a ton of data and information from that. It's happening every day. But when it comes to written content, it's not happening every day. It's happening at various periods throughout, a week, a month, a quarter, a year. So getting enough data and having or ensuring that they're trusted data sources to train the models and to be able to detect anomalies, it just makes it a lot more challenging. So I think that's really the main challenge that you see with natural language processing. And sometimes I get it with, as an example, I use Google Nest, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes when I ask it questions, it tells me it doesn't understand. And so that just tells me right there's not enough information for it to draw upon, or it just doesn't understand what I'm asking. I try to ask it in different ways. I may get the same response. It's typically, I think, tied to there's not enough data sets out there to validate that what it's going to come back with as a response is accurate.
Yeah, I got that all the time with Siri. And I just decided it didn't understand the way that I spoke, and I turned it off. But definitely has some challenges. Well, thanks for sharing your insights on this. Any other final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
We've really been using this form of machine learning for quite some time. I suspect that over time, it's also going to get better, and it has gotten better. What's going to be interesting is the use of this in, maybe I'm just going a little bit off the rails here, but the thought of the use of robots within the human race down the road. I think this would be an important integrated part of any robots or androids that are created to be used by humans as companions to help them with whatever. It needs to advance more, and I think it will advance more and it will get better, but it will be an integrated part of any AI, machine learning, NLP is going to be right alongside it.
Cool. Well, thank you to our listeners. Be sure to tune back every first and third Thursday of the month for another coffee break session. Thanks, Paul.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.